Welcome to the La Grim Reaper channel, where we bring you bone-chilling true stories from around the world. From haunted houses to unexplained disappearances, we have it all. So turn off the lights, grab a blanket, and get ready for a scare.
It was one of those nights, with the storm raging outside and the cold wind whistling through the trees. We could hear the rain hammering against the roof, each droplet falling with a purpose, like a million tiny drummers tapping out a rhythm. My wife Sarah and I sat in the comfort of our living room, the fireplace's warm glow dancing off our faces, casting long shadows that flickered and wavered on the walls. Suddenly, the tranquility of the evening was shattered by an insistent, impatient knock at the front door. It echoed through the old wooden structure, louder than the thunder that rumbled in the distance. Sarah and I exchanged a glance, surprise and concern etched on our faces. Visitors were rare in these parts, especially on a stormy night like this one. Stepping into the harsh cold, we opened the door to find a woman on our doorstep. Her clothes were soaked through, sticking to her body, revealing the curves of a life hardened by unkind circumstances. Her hair was matted against her face, streaks of blonde fighting against the muddy water that drenched her. Her blue eyes pleaded with us for kindness, for help, as rivulets of rain streamed down her face, merging with the silent tears she was shedding. "My car broke down a few miles from here," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, almost drowned out by the fierce winds. The woman had no umbrella, no coat, nothing to shield herself from the relentless onslaught of the storm. Her face was a picture of distress, a painting of desperation washed over the streaks of rain and worry. My wife Sarah and I shared a look, a silent conversation passing between us. Sarah was the more compassionate of us, her nurturing nature always leading the way. It was her silent nod that sealed the decision. "Of course, you can come in," I heard myself say, stepping aside to let the drenched stranger in. "You can't possibly stay out in this weather." The woman sighed in relief as we welcomed her into our warm and cozy abode. The raging storm almost swallowed up the sound, but the gratitude in her eyes was unmistakable. As she crossed the threshold, it felt as if the storm was temporarily locked outside, unable to infiltrate the safety of our home. Sarah, ever the meticulous caretaker, immediately rushed to fetch some dry clothes. She returned with a soft, comforting sweater and a pair of plush sweatpants. They were simple, unassuming clothes from our own closet, but to the woman, they seemed to be a lifeline. She took them with a shaky thank you escaping her lips, her blue eyes welling up with unshed tears. While she changed, I busied myself in the kitchen. The scent of the chicken soup that Sarah had prepared earlier in the day still lingered in the air, a comforting aroma that seemed to whisper promises of warmth and safety. I ladled the still steaming soup into a bowl, the gentle puffs of steam swirling up and dissipating in the air. A couple of fresh bread rolls completed the makeshift dinner. As I set the table, I could hear the rain persistently drumming on the roof above, a sharp contrast to the warmth that filled our farmhouse. When she returned, dressed in our clothes, she seemed a little less like a stranger. The sweater was slightly large on her, the sleeves hanging past her wrists, the soft fabric engulfing her slender figure. The sweatpants were cinched at her waist and the ends pooling around her ankles, but she looked comfortable, the previous chill replaced with a semblance of warmth. She accepted the bowl of soup with grateful hands, her gaze never leaving the inviting sight of the hot meal. As she took the first sip, I saw her eyes close momentarily, relief washing over her features. The woman was halfway through her soup when I first noticed it, a sharp, almost predatory glance directed at the antique clock adorning our mantelpiece. It was fleeting, but it sent an inexplicable chill down my spine, momentarily overpowering the storm's cold clutches outside. Her eyes held a gleam I couldn't quite comprehend, a mixture of malice and something else, something dangerous. I exchanged a quick glance with Sarah, but she seemed oblivious, her attention focused on her own soup. As the evening wore on, the woman's behavior started deviating from the norm, transforming from odd to outright bizarre. She would smile at the most inappropriate times, when I mentioned the aging roof needing repairs, when Sarah shared about our dog who had passed away last winter. It was unnerving to say the least, the warmth of her smile starkly contrasting the icy cold glint in her eyes. Then came the demands, each one more peculiar than the last. One moment she was complaining about the cold, asking if we could turn the heat up. Minutes later, she was fanning herself, demanding that we let in some cold air. She insisted on moving our furniture around, claiming the sofa facing the window would disrupt her energy flow. It was as if our quaint little farmhouse was suddenly too restrictive for her. The atmosphere started to shift. The once cozy and familiar setting of our home felt tainted by her presence. Sarah and I exchanged worried glances, and unease clearly mirrored in our eyes. Conversations started to feel more like interrogations, her tone assertive and overpowering, the friendly banter replaced by her strange proclamations. As I sat there listening to her bizarre claims about the feng shui of our living room, I couldn't help but feel the tension mounting, a sense of dread creeping into the corners of the room. Our kind stranger was not so kind anymore. Something was terribly amiss, and as her erratic behavior escalated, so did the disquiet within me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that we had invited something far more sinister than a simple stranger seeking refuge from the storm. Our suspicions didn't find solace until late into the night, as Sarah and I sat on our worn-out couch, our hearts heavy with unease that had stubbornly taken root. The woman had retired to the guest room, leaving behind a trail of disturbing eccentricities that seemed to hang in the air like tangible ghosts of our growing fear. The flickering light from the outdated television bathed our faces as we absent-mindedly tuned into the late-night news. As the local news segment unfolded, a picture flashed on the screen, the anchorman's voice seeping into our consciousness. Escaped from police custody, dangerous and cunning. The picture was a mugshot, raw and glaring, of the same woman who was under our roof, fast asleep in our guest room. The cold reality was like a splash of icy water. Each detail from the news report engraved itself into our minds. The woman, an infamous con artist, had been on the run since she had outsmarted her guards and escaped a few days ago. Known for her deceptive charm and manipulative tactics, she was not to be approached under any circumstance. My heart pounded against my ribs, the drumming echoing the terror coursing through my veins. Sarah clutched my hand tightly, her face pale as a sheet, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Our haven, our sanctuary, had been invaded by a dangerous fugitive, a threat we had welcomed with open arms, blinded by the facade of a helpless woman seeking shelter. Reality sunk its teeth into us, our blood running cold as we comprehended the gravity of our predicament. The storm outside was no longer the enemy. The real threat was nesting inside our home, behind the deceptive mask of a distressed stranger. Each tick of the old wall clock echoed in the sinister silence of our living room. The ticking hands, a grim reminder of the terrifying predicament we found ourselves in. The quaint farmhouse we had once found comfort in had turned into a threatening cage, with a dangerous predator lurking within its confines. In the bleak light of our predicament, our once peaceful home felt like a ticking bomb, its walls pulsating with the quiet, perilous tension that accompanied our unwanted guests. It was a standoff, one where the odds were stacked against us. We were prisoners in our own home, a threatening cloud of danger hanging over us. Our lives hung in the balance, teetering on the precipice of the fugitive's volatile temper. Every creak of the wooden floorboards, every gust of wind against the windowpane, felt like a scream in the oppressive silence. We treaded carefully, every word, every moment weighed with the need to keep our newfound knowledge hidden from the woman. We were walking on a thin wire of uncertainty and fear, knowing any misstep could plunge us into a danger we were desperate to avoid. A plan began to form, etched in silent glances and coded whispers. Our resolve hardened in the face of the looming threat. We were determined not to be victims. Under the guise of calling a friend to check up on them, Sarah managed to slip her phone from her pocket, her trembling fingers dialing the 3 digits that could be our lifeline. 911. As Sarah moved cautiously, I took it upon myself to distract our uninvited guest. The woman sat in our living room, oblivious to the plan unfolding right under her nose. I tried to maintain a casual demeanor, engaging her in a conversation about her supposed car troubles. The words flowed out of me in a forced stream, a disjointed dialogue about carburetors, spark plugs, and timing belts. I did my best to keep the conversation flowing, to keep her focus on me and away from Sarah. It was a dangerous dance. One wrong step could spell catastrophe. Each ticking second was a heartbeat in my ears, the time stretching into an agonizing eternity as I watched Sarah out of the corner of my eye. Her back was to us, her voice a low murmur on the phone. The tension in the room was palpable, a live wire of anxiety and dread that threatened to spark at any moment. Sarah's conversation ended abruptly, her head turning slightly towards me, eyes wide with silent confirmation. The call had been made. As the deafening silence hung in the room, a surge of sound echoed through the house. The piercing wail of sirens reverberated in the night, the red and blue lights illuminating the darkness outside. The arrival of the police was like the lighthouse in a storm, a beacon that marked the end of our nightmare. They streamed into the house, uniforms a blur of authority and safety, their radios crackling with indistinct chatter. The woman, taken by surprise, barely put up a fight. As they handcuffed her, confirming her identity through rapid exchanges on their radio, a wave of relief washed over Sarah and me. The grip of fear that had held us in its icy grasp was slowly easing, replaced by a surreal sense of peace. Our home was ours once again, and the malignant presence that had invaded it now banished. The woman was led away, her threatening aura shrinking with every step she took away from our door. In the aftermath, as the adrenaline slowly ebbed away, we found ourselves wrapped in a quiet reflection. The ticking clock, the low hum of the refrigerator, and even the gentle patter of rain against the windows all seemed amplified in the wake of the chaos. We looked at each other, the ordeal creating a silent understanding between us. We had narrowly escaped a situation that could have ended very differently. Gratitude filled our hearts, not just for our escape, but for the lesson that the harrowing encounter had taught us.
We hope you enjoyed our spine-tingling stories. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our latest uploads. Until next time, sweet dreams, if you can sleep at all.